The NFL draft is 2 weeks from today. A lot of people, myself included, believe that the number one pick isn't really even necessary to discuss because it's Jameis Winston going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where things get interesting is what the Tennessee Titans are going to do with that number 2 pick, and there's all kinds of different things flying around out there. So we thought we'd bring in a guy that knows far more than us because he covers the Titans and has since they made their way to Nashville back in the 90s. Jim Wyatt, who is the Titans beat writer for the Tennessean down in Nashville, joining us now on the Menard Studio Hotline. Jim, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Obviously, and I know you've written some stuff about the idea of maybe a Phillip Rivers coming to Nashville kind of scenario. So let's start there. Is that even possible? Is that something that is a feasible thing, or is this just something that media bats around as a kind of a neat idea?
Well, I mean, I think there's something to it. Whether it plays out, I mean, that's another thing. It all hinges on the Chargers. I mean, it makes a ton of sense for the Titans. I mean, they would certainly welcome Phillip Rivers to town if they could get him on a reasonable deal. My biggest problem with this thing all the way through is why would the Chargers let him go? I mean, they got a franchise quarterback and Rivers, a proven winner. Why let him go and be the team that takes the chance on Marcus Mariota? If the Titans are not wanting to do it, why would they? And, it makes some sense from their standpoint because I do believe Phillip Rivers, and this all started when Kevin Acey, who's a friend of mine, he covers the Chargers for the San Diego Union-Tribune, talked to Phillip Rivers, and he expressed some concerns and really pretty much laid it out that he was not interested in playing in Los Angeles if the team moves there. He's got 1 year left on his contract, and if he sticks to his guns there and people close to Rivers act like he's serious when he says that, then they potentially could be faced with a situation where they've got him for 1 more year. They can say what they want to about franchising him after that because his contract ends after next year. If he's adamant about it, he'll just retire, and then they'd have a quarterback for 1 year. So if you're the Chargers and he's serious, then you potentially try to get something done now where you can get something for him, and that's the only reason it makes sense from San Diego. We could spend a lot of time talking about why it makes sense for Tennessee. He was with Kid Withehunt before. He grew up in northern Alabama, played high school ball about an hour and a half from Nashville. His in-laws live in Tennessee. Titans need a quarterback desperately. So it makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. It just, does it add up for San Diego? That's what has to play out.
Jim Wyatt from the Tennessean joining us on the Menard Studio Hotlines. Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. I get the impression, and maybe they're just blowing smoke because it's 2 weeks from the draft, and they're everybody's trying to keep their hands close to the vest, so to speak. Are they really that enamored with Zach Mettenberger as they seem to let on?
Well, I mean, they have let on lately that they're enamored with these other quarterbacks, and they like Mettenberger, and certainly, it's not going to be a complete shock to me or anybody here if they decide to go that route. But what they've done the last couple of weeks has not led you to believe that they're completely satisfied with him because they went to Jameis Winston's pro day, and then they had a private meeting with him in Tallahassee. They brought him to Nashville. They went to Marcus Mariota's pro day, had a private meeting with him, brought him to Nashville. They spent a ton of time on the 2 quarterbacks in the draft, and if they were sold on Mettenberger, they wouldn't be doing that. So they're exploring all their options. I mean, I like Zach Mettenberger. I thought he played, I think he's got promise. He's got a strong arm. I like his work ethic, and I think he's showing the signs, that you need to be an NFL quarterback. But, I mean, how can they be sold on him yet? He's only played in 6 games, hasn't won a game yet. He ended the season hurt. He was a 6th-round pick, who had a lot of questions coming in. They're not sold on him yet, and no matter what direction they go, if it's not Rivers, they're going to be rolling the dice because Mettenberger is an unknown quantity. Mariota, Winston both come with risk. So that's why these guys are going to make a decision that's either going to be right and they'll be praised for it down the road, or they're going to make a decision that proves to be wrong, and you're going to have a new coach and GM in here in the not so distant future.
Well, even if they don't trade out of that number 2 slot, to try and get something big for that, because there's a lot of talk, a lot of speculation of several teams wanting to move up, try to get a shot at Mariota. But if the Titans stay in that number 2 slot, what's the buzz around Nashville about taking Mariota or getting something on defense? Because obviously the Titans can use some help on defense as well. They need somebody to get in that offensive backfield. Maybe a Leonard Williams from USC, something like that. What's the buzz around Nashville? Which way do people want them to go?
Well, Leonard Williams is the safest pick, and I think he's the guy that people think is a can't-miss player. You know, they signed Brian Orakpo this offseason. You know, they re-signed Derek Morgan. They brought in here Dick LeBeau, and Leonard Williams is described as a perfect fit for this defense. And, you know, he's a great player. There's no question about that. With that said, I wonder about how much bang they'll get for their buck if they take him at number 2, because he'll be a great defensive end in a 3-4 defense, but he's not going to be asked to get you 12, 13 sacks. I mean, if all goes well for him, he gets you 5, 6 sacks, and he holds down his line, his end of the line, and is disruptive for him. But I don't know that you're going to get the same impact plays from him that you would an edge rusher, that you would a receiver, that you would some other position. So if I'm in that seat, I would try to trade out of 2 and try to get a number of picks and address a number of different positions. So fans are split on taking Williams. Fans are split on wanting them to trade out. You got some fans that that think they ought to pick the quarterback that's left, either Winston or Mariota. Some fans, want Mettenberger. And then now with the Rivers talk, you got fans wanting him. So you got about 5 different scenarios, and I think opinions are all over the place on what they ought to do. It's hard to name a favorite because there's so many scenarios out there.
Gordon O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 online, ESPNEvansville.com. Jim Wyatt from the Tennessean covers the Titans for them down in Nashville, Tennessee, joining us on the Menard Studio Hotline. And I don't know how much you get a chance to talk to the front office people, your sources, whatever. Are you getting any kind of feeling of what direction they're going to go, or is it still very much up in the air from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's up in the air. Yeah, I mean, they are still bringing prospects in. They're still evaluating guys. The draft meetings start where all the scouts come in and they start really finalizing the draft board. That starts next week, and I think at the end of next week, 4 or 5 days out, they'll have a better idea. But again, they don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if you ask them who they're going to pick, I mean, that's the way it is a lot of times in the draft. The teams don't even know what's going to happen. They the Rivers thing, they could be planning on picking one guy and the Rivers thing plays out, or they could be planning on picking, somebody else, and maybe a team comes up and wants to trade with them. So they don't even know what's happening right now because there's so many different scenarios out there. Certainly, they like certain guys better than others. They don't let me see the draft board or how they rank these players, but it's all about value and all about trying to get the biggest bang for your buck with that pick.
Well, whatever happens in the draft, whichever way they go, if Mariota is a Titan or if Williams is a Titan or whoever is, what do you see from this team? What are you expecting coming in to the season? Because like you say, they've added some defensive punch. I mean, Orakpo he's a monster if you can keep him healthy. Cox is very good. Cersei the same way. Dick LeBeau, I don't know if you get any better, honestly, at a defensive coordinator than that guy. But what do you see happening coming into the season?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I mean, I can't. After seeing them play last year and finishing 2-14, I mean, they've got a lot to prove. I mean, I've sat through 9 or 10 double-digit losses last year. Yes, they have upgraded that roster, I believe, this offseason. They've upgraded the coaching staff, but they've got to prove it. I mean, they got to show something, and the schedule's easier. I'll say that. I mean, I think they've got some winnable games on the schedule, but they still have a lot of question marks. They're still missing a right tackle. They've only got 3 receivers on the roster with real NFL experience. They've got a question at quarterback still. the running game very underwhelming last year. They haven't addressed that yet. So they've still got some holes on offense that may look different after the draft. Defensively, they'll be better. But you mentioned Orakpo. Orakpo is an upgrade. Will help them. They signed Pierce Cox from the 49ers. They signed Norris Searcy, a safety from the Bills. Zach Brown, a linebacker who was hurt in week 1 last year's back. So you potentially got 4 new starters on defense. But those guys have got to gel and come together. So they should be better. But based on their team right now on April the 16th, I'm not necessarily expecting a huge jump and all of a sudden them being a playoff contender based on what they've done so far. I mean, if they get Phillip Rivers, I think that changes the look of things. But they've still got a lot of question marks as we sit here, middle of the off season.
Still a long ways to go, that's for sure. And the draft coming up in 2 weeks will be interesting to see how they how things play out, especially with that number 2 pick and as they go through the rest of the draft. Jim Wyatt from the Tennessean covers the Titans for them down there in Nashville. You can follow him on Twitter. J Wyatt Sports is where you'll find him there. A good follow for all Tennessee Titans fans. Jim, we appreciate the time, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Okay, appreciate it.